what's happening, everyone? Welcome to the program. It's Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025, and you are here for the Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's a podcast about video games where every Tuesday we all convene here live on twitch.tv or after the fact, wherever you get your podcasts or YouTube or whatever. And we talk about video games, the happenings happening around the video game industry and such, as well as the video games themselves. It's a novel, it's a novel approach to talk about a video game, but this is what we do now. This is how it's no one's talking about movies or music or books or anything like that, and so this is what we do now. For now. Until that all falls apart too. I mean, I guess with that, maybe we should just get right in. The kind of last batch of Switch 2 coverage landed this morning from a batch of pretty limited events that Nintendo held in a few different places around the world, London, New York, and such. In fact, I'm not sure if there's more than those, but they had a few people come out to just like play some of the games and not really do any coverage of the system because they were playing them on debug hardware and all this other stuff. This is we'll get into it, but this continues to be one of the strangest and most messed up console launches I think I have ever seen. Just a very bizarre set of circumstances has befallen us around the release of this device. It's so well. Yeah, I'm like looking over here. This is not the order that I was going to talk about things in, but let's. You know what? I don't really have too much. In terms of games themselves, I am in possession of Death Stranding 2, but I can't say anything more about it than that. Other than that, I have been spending some time playing Death Stranding 2. And I will have more to say about that in a few weeks, I guess. I don't know. I need to look at a calendar or something. But yeah, that's coming up here pretty quick. Multiverses was taken offline, so I installed that and messed around with it a little bit. And I guess if you have played it before, you can still install it and play it offline, but maybe if you have not already, well, you can't add it to your account because they've removed it from storefronts or something. So I guess there's no new way to get it legally anyway. But there is some kind of offline mode for all the people who want to play multiverses. I feel like if there was a lot of people in that bucket, then maybe those servers wouldn't have been taken offline, but it is, in theory, something you can still play. I played one match the day that they were shutting it down, and like I like my controls were messed up. Like I had to play it with the keyboard, which I've never done before. And so I'm playing Multiverses with a keyboard as LeBron James against a player who was on Xbox as Shaggy. And as I was trying to figure out why the controller wasn't working, he knocked me out once. And then I was like, oh, it's on the keyboard. And then I beat that guy so bad that after taking one stock off of him, he then jumped into the void over and over again to escape the match. So I'm going to just say that's ending my Multiverses career on a high note. I straight up murdered some dude. And there you go. That's right. Uninstall, motherfucker. No. And Splitgate 2. I have been continuing to play that. It's been fun. As we suspected, there's a video of that up on youtube.com right now if you want to see me playing some Splitgate 2. And I noticed while I was streaming it that the battle pass that they have expired in like 6 days. It was 6 or 7 days at the time. And I was like, oh, weird that they would have a battle pass that expires so soon. Oh, wait, that date really lines up with the Summer Game Fest live stream kind of like I bet if we did the math, it lines up with that. And they have since announced today that the official launch of the game will be this Friday. So a very short open beta for whatever that's worth, and that they are going to be showing something at Jeff Keighley's event, which happens this Friday. It is a busy, crazy week. Let's take a break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about the Switch 2 and why Nintendo doesn't respect you, I guess, is maybe the hooky way to say that going into a break. Be right back. Summer is here. Like the song. You know that. Well, anyway, summer's here. More sun, more light, more time to do all the things that make summer so special. Meaning, don't get cooped up inside cooking a bunch of food. Factor Meals is here to rescue you. Factor's chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals. They're ready in just 2 minutes and takes the hassle out of eating well. So you can focus on doing the stuff you want to do. Getting out there and living, baby. Or, going to bed early. Whatever you're into. Factor is ready for you because these meals arrive fresh and ready to eat. Perfect for any active lifestyle over the summer and beyond. They got 45 weekly menu options. These things rotate in and out every single week. So you're always getting like a fresh batch of food. You're not eating the same thing every day or every week or anything like that. You can rotate it around. Right now, coming up here, they got roasted garlic chicken, a little Italian sausage and tomato cream lasagnette, and even a charred corn and shredded chicken cavatappi. I don't know what a cavatappi is. I don't know what that is. It's food. It's good looking food. Factor powers your day from sun up to sundown. They've got nutritious breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and guilt-free snacks and desserts. So Factor can cover your whole day. That's right. They've got these add-ons. They've sent the juice along with some of this, some of the food. The juice was really fantastic. These breakfast add-ons right now. They got some egg bites. A little smoky bacon cheddar egg bites, which is always nice. Always nice. And this stuff comes right to your door. It's, freezer pack and all this. So it's packed real nice. You just take it out and you keep it cold until you're ready to go. And then, the next box shows up. It's a subscription, baby. You keep getting food in the mail. It's great. Take all the hassle out of fooding. And get the food. You can get garlic, buffalo, and barbecue rubbed wings in like a bundle as an add-on too. They got all kinds of stuff. Coconut pancakes. Looking over this breakfast, this is some nice looking. I already know the juice is good, and now I'm looking at pictures of this chicken chorizo and cheese egg bites. And I'm like, you know what? This is some solid looking breakfast right here. Get started right now at factormeals.com/JeffG50off and use code JeffG50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's JeffG50OFF at factormeals.com/JeffG50off for 50% off plus free shipping. Factormeals.com/JeffG50off. Food! All right, we're back. So, as I was saying, a batch of not reviews. I don't think any. I'm going to check around here. I don't think anyone has run anything that they would call a review. Yeah, IGN's top story right now: Mario Kart World, the final. Actually, IGN's top story right now is auto playing video for some game, some horror themed game, with no indication as to what the game is, or the name of it is, or anything like that. Great work. And then right below that is something that says Mario Kart World, the final preview. And so, yeah, so this is, I found out about this shortly after last week's podcast. mentioning like, oh, I haven't heard anything about Nintendo doing any kind of events, because it was clear that they were not going to be sending out units for launch. Like, more and more outlets were trying to we're getting out there and saying like, hey, we're pretty sure Nintendo is not going to come through with units ahead of launch. Like, if you're expecting reviews of the system or the games or whatever from us on day one, it is extremely unlikely that we're going to have that. And yeah, like, basically Nintendo is not sending it out to anyone. So what instead what they did is I think I even alluded to this probably being an option for them, was having people go to them to check stuff out. But even this seems like a very limited. Again, I think they gave like people, like 8 hours with Mario Kart or something like that, and the welcome tour. There's been some coverage of that as well, but it's not. It is not definitive. It is not. These are not reviews. And everyone, my understanding is that everyone was playing this stuff on straight up debug hardware. And so they weren't even playing on final retail units. It was a situation where I believe Arthur Geese was out there saying that yeah, these were debugs. You could not look at the menus. You could not look at the system level stuff. It was not, you were not there to cover the hardware. You were there to look at Mario Kart and the Switch 2 welcome tour. And I believe that's it. And so it's, it's kind of a last round of previews. This is not how it was supposed to go. I feel fairly certain of that. In, a couple of conversations that I've had, this is not something that they're necessarily doing by design. And the what they're getting out there and saying, what Nintendo is getting out there and saying about this is that it's not ready. That they can't send it out. This is the lead on videogameschronicles.com's story about why they are not going to have reviews. According to a company spokesperson, Nintendo decided not to send Switch 2 review units to press ahead of launch because, quote, important features and updates will only be available via a system update on the day of the console's official release on June 5th. And that they did not get into any detail about what those updates entail. And so this is of course true. I mean, this is actually not entirely unheard of in the world of console launches. When we got PlayStation 5s from Sony, they did not connect to anything. They simply would not, like, part of that was because the servers were not up and ready to go, but also like the consoles they were shipping out were earlier than the units that would end up on shelves, in terms of like the installed firmware on them, because they were sending them to us a few weeks, like a month. It was a few weeks ahead of launch of the PS5 that we got hardware from them. And so like the first updates that we needed to do, like I don't even think we could play games on that thing until they sent us firmware. And Sony's been distributing debug firmware for years, and they have a whole system in place that they use if you need to update your debug console, which is a unit that plays pre-release games. Then they had a whole system in place of FTP sites and all this other stuff that they were using for that. And so it was very easy for them to be like, here's the retail firmware for the PS5 that you have that basically does nothing right now. And so they sent us hardware that like we couldn't get online. We could not redeem codes to download games. I think it did have Astrobot installed on it. So I think it was like, check out Astrobot. And then they sent like the firmware download, which was large, that we had to, copy to, if you've ever updated a PlayStation 3, or I suppose a PlayStation 4, or I suppose a PlayStation 5 over USB, you know what this is like. You have to put it on a memory stick. Yeah. You have to put it on the USB. You have to plug it into the console. You have to go update that way. And you can still do that. Like if you choose, I believe you can do it on a PS5. You can definitely do it on the older machines. You can update the firmware on Sony consoles by going to their website, downloading the firmware, and putting it on there and going. Nintendo didn't have any sort of update process in place, at least not an official one, for updating the firmware on a Switch 1 locally. Um, so I'm guessing that the Switch 2, there's probably no way for them to update firmware on the, especially after what happened with the Switch 1, that if they were ever thinking that that might be a convenient thing to do in a user-facing way, I bet they were like, nope, lock it down even harder. And so, once we installed that PS5 firmware update, it was a PlayStation 5. And it connected to stuff, and I believe PSN worked at that point, and whatever else. The Xbox 360, actually, when we first got retail Xbox 360s, they sent us units that were broken. They sent us units that apparently would never connect to Xbox Live. Because there was some, the firmware that they had on them pointed to a server that didn't exist. And so it would never ping the update server and take the retail firmware and let us connect to Xbox Live. It was just we could play offline games. And we started when we were reviewing Xbox 360 games, we started on those units, and then they contacted us and they were like, "Hey, could you send those back to oh shit, could you send those back?" And we were like, "You need to send us new ones because we are in the middle of reviewing these fucking games. So yes, if you replace these units, we will send them back." And I think we hung on to one. I don't know where that unit ended up, but I think we hung on to one. But like, so there was this low key worry. I'm sorry for this side story, but there was a real worry. And I think all of us were sitting there like biting our nails going like, is this going to be a fucking disaster? But there was some worry even on the Microsoft end that some of those units, or that a lot of those units, were in the retail channel, and that they were about to ship a console that would be completely DOA and not able to connect to Xbox Live. And so they were trying to get them back from us to figure out like, what the fuck, where do these come from? What the fuck's going on? And there was a scramble there in the week or 2 weeks before the launch of the Xbox 360, where I think like all of us we were not getting updates from them about like, hey, by the way, this is fucked. It was just, we knew that they were extremely concerned about this situation, and had to sit there and go like, is this launch about to be completely broken? Are they about to completely ship a console that does not do any of the things they've been selling it on? Are people gonna have to go to stores to pick up discs to update firm? Like, wait, what the fuck is gonna happen? And it was not a thing. Like, I don't know, maybe they discovered that, the early batch they sent to reviewers, just some of those were on bad firmware, or whatever the situation was. It was not something that we heard about at all. And I thought it would be something where like, oh, there's going to be a limited number of customers who are going to buy an Xbox 360 and go, this thing is fucked. It doesn't work. It doesn't connect. What's going on? But apparently, I don't know what the story is there. I don't know if people I don't know if it's like a Y2K situation where it only wasn't a problem because people were very carefully scrambling and fixing it, or if it was actually not an issue. My point here is that consoles are hard to launch. And so when you hear like, hey, there's stuff about the like, because they're scrambling to get launch day firmware ready for the millions of people that will buy a Switch 2, they don't have the time, or it's understandable but disappointing. They did not make time. They did not fit time in to have some kind of intermediary firmware or something that they could put on some units and ship out to reviewers or people that needed pre-release access to hardware. They simply did not generate that from the, is the guess here. Because they are all in on launch day. They are very focused on that, and they are too busy. They are not going to fuck around and do that. And so the upshot of that is, there's no point in sending anyone early hardware because it won't connect to an update server until that server is live, and they are not going to put that server live until, I'm guessing, well, I mean, we're right there, right? Like tomorrow morning, right? When does the console, like if it's midnight East Coast time tomorrow night, meaning 9 p.m. tomorrow here on the West Coast, does that mean that they're doing is there like a 4 a.m. New Zealand launch time? Like is it something where it's, where people in some parts of the world will have these things like officially 24 hours from now, something like that, or whatever. So I don't really know. But anyway, I'm guessing that like the people who already have Switch 2 hardware, and we've seen some leaks of like people that got their hands on them and discovered like, hey, this doesn't do anything. That those people will probably be the first to report, hey, the update servers went live, and hey, we pulled firmware, and hey, now, we still can't connect to the eShop, because I bet they won't put that up until like they'll probably put that up regionally, if anything, to keep people from getting their hands on the games. And so, I bet we'll hear some stories, like maybe even later today. I would not be shocked to hear that someone who has a Switch 2 that got it early somehow, buying it off a truck or, whatever the fuck, that they're like, oh, by the way, this finally took an update. And it might not even be the final update. It might be an intermediary one. Those PlayStation 5s we got, I think they have updated firmware on those things 2 or 3 times before launch, which, is fine. Like, who cares, right? It's as long as it's there by day one. And we were able to review games just fine on, like by launch for that sort of stuff. By comparison, if you just want the full picture, the Xbox Series X showed up pretty much ready to go. I think it took like one firmware update before launch, but it was just like, here you go. Here's next. Oh, you know what it was? The Xbox One functionality did not work when we first got it. So playing older Xbox games, the backwards compatibility stuff was not ready. And so it was only Xbox Series X and S games that would run on it when we first got it. And then it took a firmware update, and then it was, then everything was functional and working and whatever. So there was a brief period of time there where we had these Xbox Series X's, and it was just like, all right, well, they sent us like one game, and all right, we're done with, okay, now what? Waiting for the update to hit, and waiting for more games to show up, because third parties, everyone sends out their codes differently. Like, I've been in contact with publishers about sending out codes for Switch 2 games, and they're probably not going to send them until Thursday or maybe even late, maybe they'll send them late Wednesday. I don't know. But they're kind of holding off on that stuff as well. So, it's, this is just kind of the worst end of it. And I think you have to look at that and go like, okay, well, if this is the state that it's in, did they discover something late? And not to start, I'm not trying to start a conspiracy here, but if we want to try to connect some dots, which maybe are not actually connected, is this related to them removing the references to variable refresh rate from the website? Was there a bunch of stuff very late in development where they were like, oh shit, we've got a lot of stuff to fix. We need to slash and burn on features to get this thing out the door, and we can worry about VRR later. Like, maybe we'll get there, but holy shit, like, I'm guessing that there's some kind of panic mode moment there. I remember hearing, you hear stories all the time, and this is fairly unsubstantiated, but like, they were hiring for PS5 interface designers pretty late in that process of releasing the PlayStation 5. And so I wonder how quickly some of that stuff came together near the end or didn't, depending on your feelings on the PS5 front end, I guess. But yeah, that a lot of this stuff, it's hard to do. There's a zillion moving parts. And so it's not weird that like the people that get left out in the cold as part of this process are like the handful of reviewers left, that they're going to be like, oh, well, we're not going to be able to make time for getting that right. And so I think Nintendo PR did what they could. I think that Nintendo PR, the public relations department, the folks at Golden Harris, or I guess is it just Golden? Anyway, they probably sat down and looked at this situation and said, oh, fuck. Okay, now what? And they decided, okay, we're putting together this event. We're putting together these events. We're going to invite a handful of people out here to get like one last look at this thing. It won't be review, like it's not going to be review ready. It's not going to be the hardware. It's not going to be this. And just said like, if you want to come out here and play this stuff, you can. And so that the coverage you're seeing today, I think, is a result of that. I think, so I look at it as like some folks somewhere down the chain got handed a big shit sandwich and said, hey, the big part of your job around a console launch, you're not going to be able to do it. So I don't know. And they figured out a way to at least get some coverage this week. So, good on them there. But it doesn't answer the questions. And like the questions around the hardware, the like, hey, here's a final review. Is this game actually good? I think some of the sounds like Mario Kart's fine. I've seen some mild negativity around some of the open world stuff, which actually bums me out because that's kind of the only thing I'm looking forward to in that game, but we'll see. But it's, hey, how much are you going to write about the new Mario Kart? And you only get 8 hours with it. It's kind of, that's that either says a negative thing about the game or not. Well, I mean, it says a negative thing about the game if you come away from 8 hours feeling like you've seen it all, right? But yeah, I think it's just a situation where this was the hand everyone was dealt, and that's just how it goes. I don't think you can necessarily read too much into it other than like, this is the bad side of the situation. Like any one of those other console launches that I've mentioned could have gone this way if things just didn't come together. If like, oh, this firmware patch, like there's very easily a situation where like, oh, we sent out PS5s to everyone without firmware, and then whoops, the firmware we're developing didn't, like, there's still an issue. We don't have it ready. It took them a couple of days, I think, before they had firmware ready, if I remember right. But like, what if that firmware, like, oh, there's a compiler, but there's this, we ran into this, or this is causing this to crash. Like, there could have been bugs that they discovered very late that could have completely derailed that process too. So I look at it as a situation of all of these are crazy now when we're dealing with internet connected devices and everything has firmware updates and everything, there's any number of things that can go wrong. Nintendo caught a bad break on whatever, and they are working to get it ready for all of you. I also think that, so I'm of a couple of minds on this, because I think it's extremely disappointing that we're not going to see any kind of editorial coverage of a critical nature of this thing before it hits. I think that's I do think that, if Nintendo had been thinking a little further ahead or something, you would like to think that they would have come up with a way for some kind of review style coverage to hit, but I don't expect that anyone's going to turn these 8-hour visits into reviews. But that's what people want to see around the launch of a console, from a traffic perspective, from a interest level perspective. The things that people want to read are critical in nature. They want to know, like, hey, is this thing good or not? This is all mitigated ultimately by the fact that this console is largely sold out. I don't expect we're going to see a ton on shelves this week. And so that idea of like, I'm going to read a review of the Switch 2 during launch week and then walk into a store and buy one is just not reality. And so the fallout from this is extremely limited to Nintendo. For the handful of outlets that are left covering games, I think it's a devastating blow. At a time when they would be expecting, like, hey, we're gonna be writing some things, we're gonna be putting some content together that people are really gonna want to see. It's gonna do very well. This is gonna be, there's money ultimately attached to that in terms of how well this content does and ad views and all this other stuff. And for a sector, video game journalism, for a sector that has been really struggling for a lot of years now. Between this and the delay of Grand Theft Auto 6, this year is getting fucked. It's getting really messed up on that specific front, right? And it's gonna get, I think it's going to make it even tougher for some of the ad supported outlets that are left out there when these kind of like big kind of tentpole moments are no longer happening, or you know, not happening in a sane and normal way. The data always suggested that the time, you know, and that the time when people are looking for a review is actually the day it is available. On a mainstream, on a large scale level, meaning not people that are trying to like argue with each other on a message board about which console is better, but like in a large scale, the data always was that you wanted to have a review on the day of launch. You could have it early, but you wanted to make sure you were promoting it the day that it was launching, because people would come. People used to go to homepages of websites. I didn't really do that much. But you wanted to make sure you were promoting the review in the top slot of the website so that people would click on it. And that's how, like, when all of those things line up, that's how I have reviews that were seen by like 2 million people in a day, you know, or something, you know, 1.5, you know, like crazy numbers. Is because that was how that stuff went. I think from a data perspective, I don't think that has really changed. I think what has changed is the number of people that go and look at any type of this content or you know, are just getting it off of social media or something instead. And so the, you know, tracking page views on a review or whatever is just a very different and largely futile effort, I think, these days. But that's, you know, but the data, I think, is still sound in that there are people who want that information, and that is when they want it. They don't want it a week before. They definitely don't want it a week after. And so, you know, it's an unfortunate situation that, like, you know, this thing is going to come out. There's going to be a spike in interest because there will be stories about how it's coming out. I have given quotes to mainstream publications that I believe will be publishing later this week about the launch of this thing and how crazy it's been. that those will be the stories instead. And they'll be like, you know, the kind of fluffy Nintendo launches Switch 2 to sales success because it pre-sold out, because of course it did. And, you know, that says nothing about anything. Brad Jago asks, how big of a bump would you see from a console launch over normal numbers? You know, it could get to be like E3 style numbers, but it was always, yeah, you could see traffic double or more depending on what you had and when you had it. Because managing a console launch when consoles used to ship with like, you know, 15, you know, well, I guess the Switch 2, if we count all this third-party stuff, like if I was looking to actually do launch-style review coverage of the Switch 2, I would be fucking going crazy right now. I would be running into the streets, ripping my shirt off, screaming, going, ah! Because you've got, what, 12 games, and a lot of them have come out on other consoles, and so, you know, maybe those will be faster reviews than they would have been otherwise. But dude, like, we would get games in a staggered way, you know, because games would be finished and they would go gold at different times. And so the discs would show up at different times, right? And so you'd be like, oh, okay, well, you know, Ridge Racer 6 is here, so let's start on that. And then, oh, wait, this other thing showed up and I'm going to assign this to this person, but we don't have enough debug hardware to go around. So I need to hurry up and finish this so I can pass this console to someone else. It would end up being that, like, I think the people on the review team would end up doing most of the launch reviews, and we would keep it kind of tight just because there weren't enough consoles to go around. And so I would find myself reviewing games that was just like, ideally someone else would be reviewing this, but I have this console for the weekend and I need to come back and have both of these reviews finished because I need to hand it to someone else so they can review this. And so there's a bunch of logistics involved in that sort of end of the process. That doesn't really happen quite the same way anymore because I don't think people really get debug hardware all that often anymore. Instead, it's just like, oh, we have a download code for a preview build and it will expire. Like Microsoft has a whole thing set up in the Xbox Insider thing where they can whitelist you for a flight of a preview build. And so it's like, hey, we're doing Forza Motorsport previews. send us your gamer tag, and you tell them, and then they go, okay, go open the Xbox Insider Hub, or go redeem this code, and then go to the Insider Hub and install this, and then you'll be able to play this like preview build of this game. And so they just do it on retail hardware now, which is neat. And so the need for actual separate hardware to review games just isn't there the way it used to be. I'm sure in a QA process, like all of that stuff still exists, but it's not something that they need to send out. So like the last debug hardware I saw was a PlayStation 4. Prior to that, it was a Wii U. We had a Wii U chained to a desk because Nintendo loves to chain things to desks. And then they came and got it one day. I don't know the whole thing. But yeah, that's sort of how, like how that stuff gets distributed today. Or, you're getting PC versions of a lot of this stuff, and then you just redeem it on Steam, and sometimes you opt into a secret beta branch with a password or whatever, like it's all very easy and very awesome. Compared to how it used to be, it's fucking fantastic. But yeah, the Switch 2 launch, I think, is very weird. I think it's sad because I do think that there's an opportunity for, genuine excitement around editorial coverage that is just not going to materialize the same way because of how this went. If people had gotten Switch 2s 3 weeks ago, then they could have been playing all of this stuff. Street Fighter, Cyberpunk, whatever. Like, presumably all of those games are just about done. There are third parties sitting there going, oh, shit. Like, we're not going to be able to get any early coverage for our games either because of this situation. Like, they're probably not super stoked about it. And that stuff still matters. That stuff still matters. So I think that that's frustrating. Ultimately, though, aside from, like smaller third parties who would love to get kind of swept up in the hype of a big launch central, like we got a custom page here with all our reviews for all these games and here's everything about that you need to know. And it takes the big games and the small games and puts them on a damn near even playing field. And you need to look at all this stuff. That's beneficial to some smaller games, so, but other than that, the hardware is pretty much sold out, like there's been the excitement around the launch of the Switch 2 is weird, and I'm trying to like remove myself. Like, I'm excited to see it because I haven't, and it's a weird scenario, and it's, like it's a very strange way to launch it or whatever. Like, I'm excited to get my hands on it, but mostly in an academic sense. I've never been the biggest Mario Kart fan, and that's kind of it. There's a lot of other third-party stuff that I'm very interested in seeing for sure. But it's games you've played before, and so there's sort of a like, all right, well, let's see this stuff and see how much better it runs or worse or whatever, and let's go from there. But I don't know, man. It just like I'm sure that there are pockets of people on the internet that are super excited about it and all of that, but I just don't see it out there. Like, as I kind of dig around, and I was rooting around message boards and Reddit and all this other stuff over the last week, just kind of looking and seeing what people were saying about it, and it was like a kind of a muted response to the launch. Yeah, I've seen multiple people in chat saying like it feels like a phone launch, and like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, I get why, like you start to, at some point, if you stare at it long enough, you start to see the Switch Pro rumors in it. You look at it and go like, huh. Yeah. Did they spend a lot of time making that and then make it into this and whatever? And so, like I kind of tried to do some poking around with school children, and ask them about this stuff, or their parents or whatever, and it was a lot of like people that didn't know that it existed, or people saying like, oh, we're not gonna get it for them now, and maybe it'll be a whatever, holiday thing or whatever. So there's kind of a weird even that felt weird. It didn't feel like kids jumping for joy about the launch of a new console or whatever. And so like even that stuff feels strange. And yeah, so I don't know. Like there are certainly they will do fine. Like and I think that's kind of the story around this, is that nothing that's about to happen over the next week or so is going to matter. Because right now I think, you know, this console is going to launch and it kind of starts the ticking clock for the holiday season. And Nintendo just has to have its act together by then, with more games, a larger, you know, like a larger list of software, more availability for the device itself, and so on. And so I think that I look at it that way and just go like, yeah, you know, it's easy to want to pick apart the launch and say something about the excitement. All I know is that when pre-orders were happening, everything I heard about how that process went was like, people are clearly fucking stoked for it, or they're all scalpers. Who knows? But they had no trouble. They have had no trouble selling hardware. And so, you know, like I don't think there are many learnings you can take from this. And other than like it feels like there should maybe be like one more big, huge release at launch, at least one, if not more. And I think that the launch feels a little weird. That's how I look at it. You just look at it and go like, yes, Mario Kart has been their largest selling franchise for years and years. It's very smart of them to have this game ready for launch, and they'll do fine. And whatever. But then it feels like the rest of it is a little weird. You know, Donkey Kong will come out, and, you know, like every game release will chip away at this feeling. And we'll probably get there. Well, you know, hopefully for them, they'll get there by the holiday season, and no one will think about this shit at all, and who will care. But yeah, the rest of it is just like, yeah, I mean, the type of people that would be excited about GameCube games on a Switch 2 are probably not the main, like they're the main audience for a console launch, but they are probably not the main audience for a Nintendo device in general. And so, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. You know, is this going to be something where people are going to be scalping it? I've seen some, like you've seen some attempts to sell pre-orders for higher than the asking price and whatever, but it hasn't felt like that's been a dominating story around this. Is that like, oh man, scalpers snapped them all up and everything's fucked and whatever. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it all goes. And I think that'll be the true test for it. Not to, you know, like this is not me moving the goalposts or whatever. It's just that like, whatever, they sold a bunch already. And so on some level, who cares right now about this stuff? It'll, you know, they'll probably spend way more marketing money in the run up to holiday as well, assuming they're going to have consoles, you know, to sell by then, and there's a reason for them to market them. But, you know, but it doesn't, you know, there's been, I feel like I've seen some stuff, but it hasn't been like a full-on marketing blitz the way that some console launches have felt in the past either. So, you know, I don't know. It's a new world also, you know, launching kind of post-COVID and everything else. And what does it mean to launch a device after all these years of a fucked up supply chain? And of course, into this world of tariffs and all the uncertainty around that. I mean, Nintendo really kind of like, they got dealt a very rough hand in a couple of different ways around this in terms of timing and whatever else. So we'll see how it all goes. Like that's kind of the other weird thing about this is like, what if we get to holiday and there are not a bunch of new consoles readily available? What if they have not solved any kind of like supply issues by then? So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, they're buying some kind of billboard style and other kind of outdoor advertising. I've seen some pictures of that stuff as well. So, you know, they are getting out there and doing some stuff. It's not to say they're doing nothing, but I don't know. It just it feels weird. When I was talking about it on Blue Sky, one of the replies I saw multiple times was people saying, "I'm buying one. I don't know that I'm super excited for it right now, but I'm buying one because if I wait until there are more games available, the price of the console will have probably gone up by then." And that's just a terrifying. I get the mentality 100%, but it's terrifying that is where we're at. Is people going like, well, I got to get one now because they'll probably be $600 next year. That fucking sucks, dude. That's terrible. It's a nightmare. So yeah, whatever. They'll sell a bunch of these at launch, and we just kind of have to see how it goes from here. I think that there's, again, as I've been saying for a while, I think there's a real potential here for the Switch 2 to change some things about the cost of game development, all this other stuff. Like if the third party if interest in third party games on the Switch kind of continues to pick up from where it kind of got to on the Switch 1, and we start to see more and more kind of games based on newer code bases as opposed to the Switch 1 was just getting older and older all the time. What does that do for development costs? Does it lead to a scenario where more and more developers are willing to just target the Switch 2 directly and then port up from there and whatever else? Like, I think there are some interesting scenarios that I think that really could lead to some change in the cost of development and all this other stuff. All these other things that I think a lot of people have been complaining about in the industry for a long time. I think there is a path where the Switch 2 helps alleviate some of that. And of course, it also continues to further interest in handheld devices, which everyone's going to get into, whether they like it or not. It seems like everyone's gonna have their own handheld device before too long. And yeah, we'll see how it all goes. I think from that angle, I think it's it's obviously like a very interesting time. I don't think it's like dire, it's not like gaming is at a crossroad, but it's just we've found ourselves into this very interesting and in some ways desperate moment in time, where I think you have some folks looking at the Switch 2 and hoping that it changes a few things, including the price of games, which I don't think Nintendo realized they were walking into that landmine on game prices. The way they ended up doing so, but yeah. Anyway, that's like literally tomorrow night. I thought it was Thursday night. I thought that the official launch date was Friday, and so Thursday was going to be the nighttime. But I was reading, I did the whole like 12:01 a.m. math incorrectly, which has led to me almost fucking up some embargoes over the years. Let me tell you, but I got an email from Best Buy, which is where I have a pre-order, and it was like, yep, come Thursday at 12:01, and that means 9 p.m. Wednesday. I was like, oh shit. It's a good thing I read this email because I was planning on going Thursday night, but it is in fact tomorrow night that this is launching. Sure doesn't feel like a console is launching tomorrow, but yeah, I don't know how that's going to go because there's a lot of moving parts on my end with that stuff. But I'm going to go out and I'm going to go get a Switch 2, and if I come back here and the baby has cooperated and she is asleep upstairs and not asleep downstairs, then I might try to run a stream tomorrow night after I get home. And kind of see how it all goes. Or if the baby is awake and perky and I'm not like keeping her awake or whatever, then maybe I could run a stream with her in the background. That would be it. That's not a fun. We'll see. we'll see how that goes. Let's take one more break, and we'll get back, and we'll talk about the rest of the news. And we'll be right back. Harry's, it's simple. You can get incredible quality razors and shaving products. It will help you keep your signature look. Whatever you're going for. Your facial hair can completely change your overall look. You're looking to maintain that style. You're looking to change it up. Razors are where it's at. And Harry's is a fraction of the price of the other big brands. So the best quality and the best value. And on top of that, you can get a $10 trial set for just $5 at harrys.com/Jeff. That's right. This thing is quality, man. They sent this out. A weighted handle. And it's like, what is that? So it's got some weight to it. Yes. But when you're controlling a razor on your face, that weight actually really comes in handy. It keeps it nice and balanced in the hand. And it's a nice looking razor on top of all of that. Something you can leave on the shelf and go like, yeah, look at this. Look at this machine. Look at this super thing I could use to wield these German engineered blades. They stay sharper longer, and you got customizable delivery options with scheduled refills for as low as $2. That's half of what you pay for the other big brands. Yeah. And they don't just do razors and blades. You can get body wash and lotion and hair gel and deodorant. All sorts of stuff to make your bathroom experience just a little bit more pleasant and leave you looking a little bit better coming out than you did going in. Get this 5-blade razor, this weighted handle, a little bit of foaming shave gel, and a travel cover for just $5 at harrys.com/Jeff. At these prices, if you're shaving, come on. What are you going to go get these like awful plastic handles? You're going to go buy like 10 of these disposable razors at the store. You use them on half your face, and by the time you get to the other half, the blades are already dull. Forget it. Harry's has German engineered blades. Stop screwing around. Get the complete package. Get a little deodorant, all this other stuff. They got amazing smelling deodorant for just $5 too. Highest customer satisfaction in the shaving industry. It's a no risk trial. So if you don't like your shave, no, don't worry about it. It's on them. And it's a convenient subscription option that you can cancel at any time. If you're not into it, if you're just like, what? The bearded life is the life for me. Go easy on the blades. They make it simple. Define your look with the best shaving products at the best price from Harry's. Normally, this trial set is $10, but right now you can get it for just $5 at harrys.com/Jeff. That is the exclusive link. harrys.com/Jeff for a $5 trial set. That's the wrong button. It's the wrong button, man. Starting the show over again. Have you heard about this Switch 2? They're making a follow-up to the Switch. James Bond. James Brown is dead. Have you heard of this guy? James Bond Senior. Sorry, James Bond Senior is his official name, not James Bond Jr. That's a different guy. IO Interactive has been hard at work on a 007 game for quite some time. They are finally getting ready to show it. I wasn't sure if they were going to announce this or stream this, but they are, in fact, doing both. The name of the game is 007 First Light. That's kind of the only detail that they've given on the game itself, and they are going to show more of it Friday night. They're having an event here in the greater Los Angeles area where they're going to show off that, and I guess some more Hitman stuff. And also Mind's Eye, which we were talking about last week, the Build a Rocket Boy game. They're going to show something on that because that's out on like the 10th. That game is almost out. they have been giving interviews about it and sounding a little. Well, they've been talking a little bit about it. Anyway, 007 First Light is they're going to be showing it at this thing. They're going to stream that on Twitch and YouTube and TikTok. I don't know what to expect from this. I mean, I'm very much looking forward to seeing. I have been wanting to see this Bond game for a long time. Hitman is such an awesome game. We've talked about it. We've talked to death about Hitman. Hell of a game. You should reinstall Hitman. But I do think that, there are things about the framework of Hitman that I think if you applied some of those things to a James Bond game, I think that there's something kind of awesome, potentially awesome about that. The limited bits I have heard from people who have seen the game have been positive, or working on seeing it. I guess I won't get more specific than seeing the game. Have had nice things to say about it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm very curious to see how this thing looks when they do show it off, and really what type of game it is. I don't know. Like, they're holding a whole separate event here for IO. Like, IO Interactive is holding their own event for these 3 games, and so hopefully there's more there on Bond than just a trailer. I would really like to see some details on it. And find out more about what they plan to do with it. It says here, fans can also look forward to additional surprises and special guests throughout the show in celebration of IO Interactive's abundant future. I assume additional surprises is Kane and Lynch 3. Let's hope. Dude, I would be so in. As someone who liked Kane and Lynch 2 and had some issues with the first game, I would be very interested in seeing what they would do with another one. Freedom Fighter, maybe with the world the way it is right now, there's maybe never been a better time for a Freedom Fighters reboot or sequel or something to that effect. So, or maybe it's Little Ninjas. Little Ninjas is back finally. Yeah, so that's coming up Friday night. That is after the Keighley thing, and the what day of the devs is after that? Anyway, yeah, I don't know. Go look at a calendar. It's 6 p.m. Pacific time on Friday night is when the IO Interactive thing is happening, and hopefully that is cool. Windows Central is reporting that Microsoft has put some of its handheld device dreams on hold. In favor of an Asus partner device that is a Windows 11 handheld device. And that is, I guess, going under the name Project Kennan. And that they are also going to be putting more time into working on Windows 11. As opposed to the handheld plans, which Windows Central had reported on previously, were like that it was going to be some kind of Xbox handheld, and that would be something that they would be putting out kind of alongside the next generation Xbox, which, it's hard to say what those plans are and what that means at this stage in the game. As I've said before, as we've talked about this stuff, I think the idea of a closed platform from a company that is now publishing games across all platforms is a little weird. So I look at it and think like, well, presumably any handheld that Microsoft would make themselves would probably just run Windows, right? If anything, I would expect them to come up with a solution that allows you to run Xbox games on Windows 11. But we don't have we don't have enough information to kind of fill in the blanks on that. But what we do have here is Jez Corden's reporting saying that that Microsoft has put its own handheld plans on hold in favor of spending more time getting Windows 11 ready for other Windows-based handhelds, including this device that they're working on with Asus. I look at this as like, yeah, of course. Like, you can't put the cart before the horse on this stuff. If they're working on a handheld device and they're hitting walls like, dude, Windows 11 cannot do this. You're starting to see like people starting to do testing, trying to compare SteamOS versus Windows 11 on like the same hardware. Now that that's becoming more of a thing you can do, which you could always do on a Steam Deck, but the drivers weren't always there. But like now that we're seeing Windows devices that allow you to install SteamOS without issue, like this Legion Go S and some of this stuff, and people are starting to do some of those tests and finding like, man, Valve's fake Windows is better at running Windows games than Windows is. That's not a place that you want to be if you're Microsoft. If you're investing into this sector and you're like, we've got more handhelds coming along and we're doing all of this, if the information right now is like, dude, Windows 11 is just not ready for prime time when it comes to this form factor and getting the most performance out of this device at a power profile that is battery friendly and blah blah blah, with all those caveats in place, you have to stop and work on the OS, right? You can't just go full steam ahead with like, and the Xbox handhelds is still coming too. Like, you've got to solve that problem. If they can't solve that problem, then they're gonna be in trouble in some of these direct comparisons forever. Right? So this is a problem that they need to solve. This was a problem that I had with the ROG. This is one of the many problems I had with that first generation ROG Ally, is that Windows 11 was just not well suited for such a device. And so they need to be coming up with, and they've been doing this in bits and pieces, right? The Xbox app has been updated to have more of a controller-friendly UI and like this compact view that they use for that. I don't think that's a very good solution. Where they're at right now, I don't think that they're there, but it's better than it was. And so they've had some incremental updates and changes along these lines to try to shape up some of the more glaring issues. But it sounds, it just, there's more work to be done. I don't think that's a surprise. But maybe this is an indication that it's taking them a little bit longer than they thought to kind of solve for this kind of Windows performance gap, and get these things working the way that they need to. Not just from a like frame rate and all this other stuff or image quality, whatever, but from a UI perspective, right? I mean, you need to find a way to have something that is potentially as open as Windows is, while also having it be something that you can use in a very friendly fashion using a controller that is sitting on either side of the screen. Windows 11 was not built for that. And so it's not surprising that they have a lot more work to do there. So yeah, this is kind of the report out of Windows Central, is that Microsoft still wants to build its own Xbox handheld in the future, but Microsoft has decided to prioritize its teams to improve Windows 11 gaming performance, specifically for devices like the Asus partner device, Project Kennan. It's possible that the existential threat from SteamOS, which on paper delivers better gaming performance than Windows 11 itself, has informed these decisions. Our sources have indicated to us, meaning Windows Central, that Microsoft is still deeply investing in developing its own Xbox gaming handheld technology in the future, but it was announced internally today that the priorities are moving more deeply towards third-party OEM handhelds in the interim. So yeah, I think if you think about what Xbox has been up to this point, it's easy to look at that and think like, well, of course, an Xbox handheld is an Xbox handheld. But I don't know what Xbox means anymore. I like Xbox. If everything is an Xbox, then why wouldn't it just run Windows at this point? Why wouldn't the next Xbox just be a much more open device? Shouldn't I be able to install Steam on an Xbox? Shouldn't I be able to install Steam OS on an Xbox or Bazite or something? And I think that, as Microsoft continues down this road of like zero exclusives and putting everything out on every platform, which I think is a sensible move for where their business has been at, it would be cutting them off at the, like, they're getting to the last mile here. They're getting to the end of the line, the end of the logical progression of transforming the Xbox brand, of putting all of these games out on all of these other platforms. And then if they get to the end of that and say, and now here's an Xbox, and it's this closed ass device, like, why? Why would I buy that when all of your games show up in all of these other places? Why would I get one that only plays this? Why would you sell something that only plays this when you're working with partners to sell handheld devices over here that run a lot of those games because they exist on PC? Instead, I would be working on, and I, this is easy for me to say without any of the numbers or any of the business reasons or whatever, but I feel like if I were in this position, I would be focusing on finding ways to run Xbox and Xbox backwards compatible software on Windows 11 or 12 or whatever you want to call it, right? On whatever timetable they're on. Like, Windows should be able to do this stuff, and then they just say, there you go. We have created the ultimate gaming device. If you, out of the box, it plays all of this stuff, and also you can go to this storefront and do this. And also, if you want to get fucking weird with it, you can install an entirely different storefront and do this. That's a device I would be very interested in. Very interested in, So and if they don't do that, if they just do like a closed device, here's an Xbox and here's your Xbox firmware update and you're the alpha insider ring of the Xbox and this and that, like, that doesn't, I don't think that makes sense anymore. I don't think that would be enough. I don't think that changes anything for them. Like, why would you pick that device over any of the other ones on the market, which would be more open and more like that those other devices are getting easier to run games all the time, and like a smoother experience. And if they do all this work with Windows 11 for these partner devices, then eventually Windows 11 gets into a state where it's like, dude, this is easy. I got this. I bought my Project Canon handheld, and it's awesome. It plays PC games, and I can play all my Game Pass stuff, and I can do this, and it's great. Why would you get something that doesn't do that if you're buying a handheld? And this gets into the very roots of decisions that Microsoft has made with the Xbox decades ago, and revenue streams that they might not be willing to walk away from, right? Namely Xbox Live. And which they've kind of pivoted away from that into the Xbox, into the Game Pass Ultimate stuff, and saying like, oh, all this stuff is bundled up here. And you see that there could be a final transition there where it's like, hey, we're dropping all of the online multiplayer requirements from this device forward. Maybe they still milk money out of the Xbox Series X and Xbox One owners or something, but it just feels like the time has come for that. And I'm sure that the people who have been getting that money coming in every month for Xbox Live Gold are freaking out. They're just like, oh, this has been a great revenue stream for decades. You're throwing it away so we can put Hellblade on a PlayStation. This is what we're doing. So yeah, it's a reckoning, right? It's them having to like really think about what they and I think that they probably at least have some of the answers to this question internally. The hardware is not bearing fruit yet, and they're still a ways off on this stuff, but you'd like to think that they probably have a roadmap here in mind where they're just like, okay, yeah, we're going to start, we're going to start with these games. and they looked at it after a few games came out on PlayStation, and they looked at what it meant for the sales of those games on Xbox and how that stuff went on Game Pass, and they charged ahead. They said, okay, no, the threats here are not real. The things that some people were worried about happening to our business, that's not happening to the degree that we thought it could. So there's no reason to stop. Right now, I mean, you can get Call of Duty in a bundle with a PlayStation 5 on sale. Like, you know, so clearly Microsoft is not shy about taking its stuff and putting it in places where it will sell. Like they're already this far down the road and then some, you know, internally, right? So how do they reconcile that approach with continuing to charge for Xbox Live as a separate thing, which they have obfuscated that charge a little bit by putting it into some of the Game Pass stuff and whatever. So like you if you look at it, you can squint and you can see what the rest of this road looks like. But we're not there yet. And so I kind of just look at it and go like, I'm kind of waiting for like one or two more shoes to drop as we get from here to here, because here is where things get logical again. And where we're at right now is things just still feel a little strange, but I do think that they will get there. And I think the handhelds have a really interesting future. Really, you know, I think the PC based handheld, whether it's running SteamOS or Windows, I think that stuff is just incredibly fascinating. It feels like a whole new direction for gaming, which, you know, you could argue like, oh, this is all kind of derivative of the Switch's success, and like, yeah, to an extent it is, but the very idea of like, hey, no, this is not a laptop, but it's still a fucking computer. Like, yo, man, if you want to hook a mouse and keyboard up to this and then get on a desktop, you can. I think that's rad. It's like you got a little cyberspace deck you carry around with you. They were smart to call it the Steam Deck. It's a good name. It's a good ass name. And yes, if they get to a point where there are great Windows-based handhelds, then yes, that solves all of the anti-cheat problems that SteamOS is currently saddled with. I would love to see that get solved on SteamOS, of course. And get us to a point where those games can be played on that device as well, or that OS as well, especially as SteamOS gets to a point where it can run on more and more hardware. You know, like if you've just got desktops with the right AMD devices in them, you can just put that shit on it and it'll mostly work. They've been polishing up SteamOS to run on some of the partner devices that they have. And so it's just a very interesting time on that front. And I think it's something that, you know, kind of helps fuel the idea of, you know, this kind of open handheld, you know, like all of this stuff. It's just a very interesting time. And a very interesting time just for the Xbox brand and what the fuck does it mean to be an Xbox and all of that. I think they're about to announce a bunch of games. Presumably they're not going to really talk about hardware here because that's something that's still going to be a couple of years off. It would be very interesting to see, because these Xbox showcases are usually so focused on it's day one on Game Pass. And then they don't really address the other stuff because the other console announcements, like that stuff usually comes much, much later in the process. I guess maybe not with Indiana Jones, but you know what I mean. Do you think that this year's Xbox showcase will say coming to Game Pass and PlayStation 5 and Switch 2 or anything along those lines? Will they acknowledge those other devices? Will they spend time on, you know, hey, Gears of War is coming to the PS5? Or will they just kind of leave that out and let a press release tell that story later? I think when they have all of these eyeballs on them, it probably makes more sense to to kind of focus on more of the console. You know, the hey, this stuff is coming to more consoles. Yeah, they did some of that at the dev direct that they had. But this is their show. This is their big showcase. This is the big event that they do, and they've done it for years and years and years. You know, this would be a good time for them to just say, hey, yeah, like, this is going to be day one on Game Pass, and also it's coming to Switch too. And maybe, you know, maybe we see some half step in that regard where it's like they do announce some games for Switch too, but they just leave the PlayStation 5 part out of it because that's where the sore spots are. Everyone's happy to put their games on a Switch too. Sony's going to put more games on Switch too. You know, it's this weird neutral territory for whatever reason. They just view it as like, well, it's not a threat to us in the same way that this other thing is, so we're all going to put our games here and on PC and see how it all goes. In other news, Wizards of the Coast. I always forget they own Dungeons and Dragons now. I'm like, you mean TSR? What are we talking about here? Wizards of the Coast has announced that they have entered into an agreement with a studio known as Giant Skull. This is a studio. This is where Stig Asmussen went after his time at Respawn, I believe. He also worked on God of War prior to that. But we've seen a batch of, I think there's some additional Respawn folks there at Giant Skull, if I remember correctly. But anyway, they are going to be working on a Dungeons and Dragons game for PC and console, according to the press release. And it is going to be a, quote, epic, exciting project. No, quote, an all-new single-player action-adventure title set in the world of the Dungeons and Dragons. That's really all we know about it at this point. But yeah, this is, you know, the press release goes on to mention it includes, the Giant Skull includes star-studded talent from premium studios who have consistently developed and launched award-winning, globally successful franchises. And they go on to mention, you know, Stig was the director of God of War 3 and, you know, the Star Wars Jedi games at Respawn and some of that stuff there too. So, and there was, you know, the press release, this is something that kind of caught me off guard. This game looks like it's fake, but also looks like it could be awesome. But they kind of, in the press release, they ran down like, also Wizards of the Coast is working with other studios on a bunch of other stuff. And they mentioned a game called Exodus that I don't remember hearing about ever. But they've got a website up for this thing, and it's apparently a bunch of, you know, the studio on it is some ex-BioWare folks, along with some other, you know, but it was like looking at it, you're like, oh, this looks like they fucking filed the serial number off of a Mass Effect game. And then I watched it for a while and saw that like they wrote some books and did some like podcasts set in the universe. And I'm looking at it and I feel like I'm looking at this thing and going like, is this an NFT thing? Because this looks transmedia in the way that you were about to tell me to fucking get on the blockchain to play it. But I couldn't find anything on. Oh, you know why it is? It's because they're looking for people to sign up and become founders for Exodus. And it's the Matthew McConaughey thing. Whatever that means, but it's weird. Like being a founder apparently just means you sign up for emails on their website, and then you get a piece of armor whenever the game comes out, which they're not saying anything about. But it left me interested in whatever this Exodus thing is, which I had completely. Maybe I've seen a trailer for it at some point. Who can say at this point? Anyway. New D&D game, single player action adventure, which is kind of cool because I feel like when I hear, hey man, we're making a new Dungeons and Dragons game, it always just my mind immediately goes to like, oh, here's going to be another kind of whatever multiplayer game that they just kind of do nothing with. But like, I don't know, that's an interesting pairing for sure. So maybe that's something we'll see a trailer for. Well, no, this is too early for a trailer at the old Game Awards. No, nothing. Well, maybe at the Game Awards, but maybe not at Summer Game Fest. We'll see. It's in Unreal Engine 5 and it's coming to PC and console. Remember how when the studio, remember when Monolith got shut down by Warner Brothers, and we spent some time talking about this idea of like, oh well, a lot of people had left that studio, and it wasn't all the same people that that Monolith was maybe known for, and the people that invented the Nemesis system that everyone loves so much. And that maybe Monolith had kind of become a somewhat different thing, or at least like the DNA had spread. A lot of that had spread to a studio known as Cliffhanger Games, which was founded by one of the higher ups at Monolith, and was an electronic arts studio. And the story, I remember, I just was talking to someone like a month ago about this, about like, oh yeah, dude, a ton of people left Monolith to go to Cliffhanger, and like it's like this Monolith is a different thing, and that there's a ton of super talented people at Cliffhanger. They've been working on the Black Panther game for a good long time. EA has canceled it, so yeah. IGN has this story that an email to staff was sent around by Laura Mealy, who said, these changes alongside other recent cancellations and layoffs are being done to, quote, sharpen our focus and put our creative energy behind the most significant growth opportunities. Some people on the mobile and central teams at EA are also being laid off. And IGN is reporting that it seems to be less than the 300 people that EA cut a month ago. This is EA, man. They are going through it. They are trying to pivot into like focusing on whatever their biggest bets are. I don't know how they put more money behind it though. Like, how do you are you going to take Madden and put more oomph behind it? Like, is Madden not getting enough oomph as it is? If so, that seems like a weird resourcing problem already. But I don't know that, like if they're going to put more resources behind their biggest bets. Well, look, there's a couple of things at play here. One, I think Bloomberg did some reporting or did some digging on this and found out two things about the Black Panther game. One, that it was going to have something that, at least resembled the Nemesis system in it, which is fucking bummer. And also that the game had been in pre-production for like 4 years. And that maybe they were, there was a certain threshold that got crossed on like, hey man, if this isn't in like full development, like we're just throwing money at this thing, like the rates that Marvel gets for its IP are going to already cut pretty significantly into the profit that EA can make out of a game like this to begin with. And so it's already a pretty razor thin margin, I'm guessing, for making money on this project. And then if you want to factor in like, where is the Black Panther IP at, and is Marvel supporting it in a way that's going to help a game succeed, or has it kind of turned the corner? I know that there's a third movie in the works, right? So, there is still something happening along those lines, I believe. But, I think it's easy to look at that and say, they probably spent a lot of money on this, and they probably had to take a long look at this project and say, are we going to make any of this money back? What does it need to sell? We were talking last week about sales projections and how ridiculous they can be sometimes. How ridiculous do you think the sales projection on this became on a studio where they had to form the studio, which is always takes time, right? I mean, you're hiring people. You have to bring in new employees. You have to get them up on the way you want to do the work. You have to figure out what the work is. You have to get the game. They're trying to get a game off the ground at the same time they're trying to get a studio off the ground. That's not fucking easy. and you're doing it under the oh so watchful eye of Electronic Arts, a company that is becoming more and more risk averse by the fucking minute. So I think you look at this and go, okay, like I see why this might happen, given again the royalty rate that Disney is going to get out of this, compared with all of the other factors at play. This is a deal that made more sense a long time ago. Marvel gave a quote to IGN because EA has multiple games in the works with Marvel. It was a 3-game deal for Black Panther, Iron Man, and an unannounced title. And so EA and Marvel have commented on that and saying, yes, the deal is still in place. The Marvel spokesperson says, the multi-title long-term relationship between Marvel Games and EA, a creative collaboration focused on original storytelling with various beloved Marvel characters, remains strong. Development of our console and PC titles, beginning with Marvel's Iron Man, is led by Motive Studios. For what it's worth, I've heard that Iron Man game is pretty fucking cool. So we'll see if that comes together. But yes, it's a sad state of affairs. I look at it as like, you know, there are aspects of this that I look at and go like, I see how this could maybe not be getting off the ground in a financially viable way, I guess. Like that sucks. It's terrible. Like you hire all these people, you know, those people who've been there for not a very long amount of time. Like they've been hiring up to make a goddamn video game. And now they're just like, yeah, well, closing that whole studio, bailing on that game. Like that fucking sucks, man. It's terrible. Yeah. The IGN story also suggests that the sports division is not affected by these changes at the moment, and that BioWare is said to be continuing to work on Mass Effect. Yeah, the sports division, I mean, you know, like yeah, why would they be affected by this? Unless you're, like, if anything, the opportunity is probably in sports, right? If you look at the soccer game post FIFA, where they just in an earnings call said that EA Sports FC is not is you know, the numbers on it are not where we wanted them to be for this last quarter or whatever. Like they probably look at that and go, that is where we put the resources on making sure that the soccer game is shored up and making money the way we need it to be making money. So we need to fix that game in, you know, 4 different ways or whatever. You know, there's, you know, Madden is still Madden, and this will be another year for college football, which will probably sell just fine. And it'll also be the first year that college football was made on an annual cycle. So let's see how that goes. And then what? Hockey? Are they still making? They're still making a hockey game, right? I mean, I know they gave up on basketball. Boy, what a crazy. The Electronic Arts basketball story is like, that's one for the ages, man. That's like the multi-level, multi-year, multi-franchise fucking fuck ups between NBA Elite and you know, that last NBA Live, for a game that was the leader in basketball for a very long time. NBA Live, for EA to have fallen on hard times, daddy. When your character's T-pose in the center of the court, that's hard times. Just fucking crazy. And it's a shame because, you know, like 2K could probably use some competition, because people seem like they're angry about NBA 2K in the exact same ways every single year, for whatever that's worth. So I don't know. They could use some competition. It'd be great to see some actual football competition out there. and to help push all this stuff forward. And that'll be a situation where we'll see some of that stuff, on Switch too, and kind of see what choices they make for those games, right? Whether it's NBA, what does NBA 2K do on Switch 2, and does the WWE game on Switch 2 get the island or whatever fuck ass mode they're coming up with that they leave out of the PC version, or will they finally close that gap on PC as well? Who knows? People Can Fly is in the news. We were talking about them not that long ago because they kind of listed the projects they had in development. There was one listed. They are, of course, working on Gears of War E-Day with Microsoft. And People Can Fly has announced that the game that they were working on with Square Enix has been canceled, as well as a VR game that was only referred to as Project Bifrost, according to VideoGamesChronicle.com. Mostly just mentioning this because we talked about the Square Enix game and like, oh man, what if that was an Outriders sequel? Wouldn't that be weird? Wouldn't that be weird if they made a sequel to Outriders? Because Square published that game. But now whatever that game was, we don't know if it was Outriders 2. I would have been down for an Outriders 2. Outriders is not a great game, but it's a solid game. Outriders is, in a lot of ways, when I think about games that are perfect for Game Pass, games that are absolutely perfect for Game Pass, Outriders is the game. It's a game that you look at and go, no one should be paying full price for this game. But you know what? As a game that I on this service I'm subscribed to that shows up here and I can play it, and it's like a pretty decent loot shooter, and it's it's got some things going for it. Outriders is A-okay. Turn on a podcast, this podcast in fact, and play some Outriders. And then the last bit of news, of course, is that Multiverses is offline. They announced this back in January, and we talked about that at the top of the show. I had to go in at the last minute there and like unlock characters because I wasn't sure if they were going to be unlocked. Like I had like 45 character tickets or whatever that they sold as part of like season pass type stuff, but they never put out enough characters for you to spend all those tickets. It's really crazy. But I had to go in and unlock like Agent Smith from The Matrix and 3 or 4 other characters that had been released as part of, whatever their post-launch updates or whatever. I have been known to, my wife and I have been known to get McDonald's Happy Meals for the kids occasionally as a nice little treat. Some chicken McNuggets or whatever. And they like toys. They're kids. They like toys. Happy Meal toys have been garbage for the most part, I can report. But for when the last Sonic movie came out, they had these little plastic Sonic figures that you could put into you'd lock them into a little hoop, and then you could roll the hoop. I don't know what the point of it was, but like that was the Sonic toy. The Minecraft toys, they were like a pretty good little statue, little figures for like the dog, Daryl? No, what the fuck? Dennis, the dog from, Dennis, the dog from the Minecraft movie. And some of that stuff was okay. There's a couple of things I've gotten, or I've seen come out of McDonald's Happy Meals that have been mind-blowing. One of them was a Crash Bandicoot like card game that was branded with whatever it was that Crash MOBA or whatever it was that came out that no one played a couple years ago. And it was like a card game based on that. And the other thing I just got like a couple of weeks ago, and it was Multiverses Puzzles, a little 6-piece puzzle, jigsaw puzzle. It was multiverse, and I literally got this like 2 weeks ago. Like, they must have just had some left, and they were between sponsorships, because I remember getting them like a year ago too. And so they brought those back between Minecraft movie, and I think right now it's Squishmallows, little tiny. Which, you don't want a Squishmallow that is that close to French fries. It's just gonna stink. And so, yeah, the idea that they had all these multiverses puzzles, and it's like, look at this. It's got the fucking guy from Adventure Time, and it's got Wonder Woman on it. It's a puzzle. And I'm obviously this stuff gets planned well in advance. But the idea that, like, weeks ahead of the game's servers shutting down, months after they announced the game was shutting down, that McDonald's is still out there giving out multiverses branded things is really fucking nuts. But hey, what are you gonna do? The puzzles still work. You can still complete the puzzles. It's got Batman on it and Shaggy, from Scooby-Doo, not Shaggy 2 Dope, unfortunately. See, if they had done a Shaggy 2 Dope skin for that would have solved all their problems. If they had just been like, yeah, I don't know, you can play as Shaggy 2 Dope in this game too. I mean, if he plays just like Shaggy, except when you hit the taunt button, he starts yelling about having bugs on his nugs. Maybe that would have been maybe we would still be playing multiverses to this day, is my point. It's going to do it for the news. Why don't we get into some emails here? podcast@guard.bike is the email address. And you can send in an email to me, and I will read it. We'll start with this one from Jacob from Florida. He has a couple of questions about ranking NES games, which, of course, every Friday, we are adding to the list of ranked 8-bit Nintendo games. You can go to 8bitnintendo.science if you want to see where the list stands, and all those videos are up on YouTube. You can, what do you go to? I think if you go to guard.bike, I think it takes you to YouTube right now. Jacob asks, will you be ranking the game Mr. Gimmick, even though it wasn't released here? A US version was made and released in parts of Europe. No, it was not released here, as you said, so it will not be on the list. Will you be revisiting any games when the science is incomplete? No plans to revisit games. The science is done. Thank you for your questions. Let's see here. Jersey Josh writes in with a question that I almost got into when we were talking about the Switch 2, and then held off, and now here we are. What are your thoughts on the long tail of the PlayStation 4? Despite being over 10 years old and with its successor being nearly 5 years old, the PlayStation 4 has continued to receive a fair amount of content. It may not be associated with as many big budget releases, but plenty of titles are still coming out for the PS4 from big and small companies. What would you attribute that to? Is it to tap into the large install base? Is it developers trying to wring as much money out of their games as they can? Could the pipeline to make a game for PS4 and PS5 be close enough that it's easy enough to do both cost effectively? I'm just surprised. Let's address that. I think it's that, yes, there are a ton of PlayStation 4s out there. The PlayStation 5 is doing well. Like everything you said kind of contributes to it, right? If the game can run on PlayStation 4, like Capcom just did this. That Capcom Fighting Collection 2 they put out did not come out on PlayStation 5, but it runs on a PlayStation 5. It's a PS4 game. And so it's a situation where, like, these are emulated arcade games. They're going to look the same no matter what. There's no point to making a PS5 specific version of this executable that's going to look identical. Like, there's no need to bother. And so, they opted to just make a PS4 version, and that allows them to address both audiences effectively. Not every game is going to be able to get away with that, right? Like pretty much anything with polygons in a real way, is you're going to notice a difference, right? So that's not something we're going to see very commonly. However, there are still a lot of people out there using PlayStation 4s from the sound of things. And so I think it makes sense on a certain level for those games to continue to exist. Now, think about it this way. Some of this is also going to be cases where like they were working on a Switch version of the game as well. And that there were also cases where, like we said, the games that are just not going to benefit from the power of a PlayStation 5. So you might as well just put it out on PS4. You're going to have more casual players that have not upgraded to a newer device. And so that's why you'll see games like Call of Duty. I think that's one of the big questions for this year, is there's been some speculation that like this year's Call of Duty might still come out on PS4, which would be kind of wild, as well as Xbox One, I guess. And that's pretty wild. But it speaks to, I think, the wide range of hardware and power and what have you that developers need to try to address. Not with all of these games, like Call of Duty is not coming out for the Switch, but in a case where you're already making a Switch version of the game, you might have assets being done in a way where you go like, oh, we could kind of just put this out on PS4 also, and I guess we might as well do that. And so you have these sort of scenarios where, also on PC, we look at, the wide range of hardware, the popularity of the Steam Deck, and I don't necessarily mean that it's like that enough Steam Decks have sold to where it's like a major factor in planning. I mean popularity in that developers seem to be going out of their way to get Steam Deck verified. They're taking those steps. They're making sure, they care about it. And so I think if you look at that device and how powerful that device is, and you look at a PS4 and you look at a Switch and you look, work that developers are already going to be doing as part of producing a multi-platform game. I think those are all things that probably contribute to the idea of just like, fuck it, let's put it out on PS4 as well. Like, we might as well. There's no reason not to. With all the other stuff we're doing, it becomes not trivial, but cheaper for us to finish that version and put it out. And so what does that mean once the Switch 2 is on the scene? If we remove the Switch 1 from the picture, which I don't know that that's something that you can necessarily count on anytime soon, what do you do when everyone moves to a Switch 2 and suddenly like, oh, well, now this less powerful device that was maybe holding us back and blah, 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 maybe that's not in the picture anymore. Is that the time to also drop PS4? Is that the time when you say, oh, maybe it's no longer worth the effort to do it because we're not doing this and this? And, it's not guaranteed that all that work transfers all around. But I guess, at the end of the day, you're already supporting a wide range of devices, low end to high end. And so when that makeup changes a lot, what does that mean? And yeah, Microsoft is supposed to be bringing Call of Duty to the Switch. Presumably that means the Switch 2. That's kind of how I always felt about that news, is like, we probably won't see this on this model of Switch, but sure. Microsoft will eventually bring this thing to everything that'll run it. Why wouldn't they? And the reason why they wouldn't is because if they can't achieve cross-platform multiplayer and all of that other stuff, then that you end up in a situation there where if you're cordoning off Switch 1 players from a matchmaking pool or something, that doesn't work out. You probably just don't end up with enough players over time anyway. But yeah, I think, we're in a world where all of these consoles are expensive, though it's worth noting the PlayStation 5 is on sale right now. For what, like $399, you can get that bundle, that digital console with a copy of Black Ops 6. Like $399 is a decent, in this environment, $399 is a pretty fucking good price for a console, I suppose. It doesn't always feel that way, but right now a PlayStation 5 is less expensive than a Switch 2, which is, maybe a little weird. All right, the second part of this question is, with the strange case of the PlayStation 4, what do you think the tail of the Switch will look like after the Switch 2 launches? Other than the NES transition to the SNES, Nintendo systems typically seem to cut off development fairly quickly after a new one launches. Nintendo has mentioned they will continue to support the original Switch, and game releases like Rhythm Heaven in 2026 bear that out for a year or so. Do you think other companies will follow suit and continue to support the original Switch as they have the PlayStation 4? So I think a lot of that depends on the backwards compatibility situation on the Switch 2, which seems good from the sounds of things. It's not automatic. There is, as we've seen, there are games that are incompatible with the Switch 2. And so you could see scenarios where I think especially like indie developers working on 2D games, would they just put out a Switch 1 game? And well, I don't know. Like, I don't know what the situation is with like how easy it is to do this kind of cross compatible thing where, like, they're saying, oh, these Pokemon games are going to run better on Switch 2, even though they're not necessarily getting like the paid upgrade level of support. Like, will you see situations where like, oh, this game will run 4K on a Switch 2 if it's docked, but also it's a Switch 1 game. Like will it end up being one purchase across both? Will they try to sell you two versions of a game? Well, I mean, meaning third parties and people selling downloadable games and things of that nature. Because I think that will dictate how a lot of this goes. I think you could see a situation where the Switch 1 gets well supported for years to come, particularly by games that are not necessarily taking advantage of whatever the major speed increase and power boost of the Switch 2. Much like Capcom's Fighting Collection was a PS4 game, will we see games that are just Switch 1 games? I think we could. Depends on what they, how do they frame the Metroid Prime, like, Switch 1 to Switch 2. I think that's like a paid upgrade technically, right? Either way, we'll see how all of that shakes out, but I would be curious to see, how easy it is for developers, because that's something that was not super easy to do on PlayStation, like having, here's PS4 and PS5 versions of games. Those kind of had to exist in separate silos, whereas like the Xbox, they did their whole smart delivery thing, which is really just like them taking the guesswork out of it and being like, hey, we're going to just download the version that runs right on the device you have, and we're going to download the right assets for it, and whether it's upgraded or not is kind of a, doesn't matter as much as like, we're just going to get the best thing possible for the thing you have. And they were a little more freewheeling or a little more open to the idea of this kind of like, yeah, this is technically an Xbox One game, or like, hey, this Xbox One game, the tile is moved up to the enhanced for Xbox, Xbox One X, and then it moved up again, and now it's optimized for the Xbox Series X or whatever, and some of the different things they did with their kind of cross-platform, cross-generation stuff. Call of Duty is still sold in this weird like cross-generation bundle where it's like if you buy the cheapest version of the game, it only runs on one device, but then the cross-gen bundle lets you play on the old one if you want, which is just a weird, I don't know, what's just a strange framing for all of it. But yeah. Drew writes in and asks, what was the general vibe of the top loading, aka new Nintendo? The top loading NES. I remember this coming out well after the SNES and not understanding who it was for. I never owned. Well, I think I own one now. I think I accidentally ended up with one. I don't know how, but I do have one. That thing came out because it was super cheap. That was their slim console in a lot of ways, right? That was their, like, you know, the PS1, the slim PS2, and the top loading NES are all kind of achieving the same thing. And it came out well after the SNES because it was like, hey, there are a zillion of these games out there, and we could put these things out for $50 and then sell them, and then sell some games and make some money for people who are on a tight budget. And so it was like it was a play for a mainstream, it was a play for a mainstream audience, for people who could not afford a Super Nintendo. And so as someone who had a Super Nintendo, it was not something that you just look at it and go like, oh, okay, all right. Why are these controllers shaped like SNES controllers now? That's kind of strange. Well, whatever. And yeah, so it kind of, but it was stripped down. Like because that's the thing they call the Famicom AV in Japan, right? Where it had actual AV ports on it, whereas here in the US it did not. And so it was like only like RF. So it was like, not only was it a budget console, but it had been feature stripped down in a way that you could not hook it up, plug it into the back of your VCR for better picture quality. Yeah, so like that was kind of silly, just again, as someone who already had a SNES, it was just like, okay, yeah, cool. I have no need for this, but it was not for those people. It was for people who wanted a budget console, and it was following in the grand tradition of the Atari 2600 Junior or whatever that thing was, the kind of redesigned late model 2600 that they sold for $50 and tried to appeal to a more mainstream crowd. So it was just that thing. So game consoles used to get cheaper over time. The prices used to go down. Like after it was out for a little while, they would go like, oh, the holidays are coming. We're going to shed $49 off the price. And so they would get cheaper and cheaper back in my day. It was a crazy time. We'll leave this person anonymous. So I'm on some bullshit Netflix preview program thing, and they send me TV pilots and movies to watch before they're released, and I take a survey on them. Recently, they had us watch the first 2 episodes of an animated Splinter Cell show. I know you don't give a fuck about spoilers, but some of your listeners might. But the long and short of it is it's a decent action/spy show. I will likely end up watching the rest of it. I think I forgot that this was even coming out, so it kind of surprised me. Yeah, they did announce that thing. I forgot all about it. But yeah, that's interesting that they're at a point where they've got a couple of episodes ready for viewing in some way. But God. Taking surveys on Netflix pilots sounds like I don't know. Dave in Illinois writes in and says, I was watching the latest NES ranking video featuring a boy and his blob when a thought occurred to me. Did Nintendo Power encourage obfuscation in some games? Issues with guides, such as A Boy and His Blob and Castlevania 2, were big sellers. I would say they were probably big sellers. I don't know. Maybe you have access to Nintendo Power sales data that I don't, but yeah, maybe they were. Did they encourage information being left out of manuals? Likely not, but I couldn't help but wonder what if. I think a lot of this is attributed to, this was not something that happened in Japan, but it's the later days of the NES, when we get to 88, 89, or 89, 90, really, you get to a point where that console is huge, right? And game rentals are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. And so I think a lot of cases, whether it's, the rise of MOOCs in Japan, strategy guides in Japan, alongside increase in game rentals in the US, led to some weird fuckery in some spots where you look at it and go like, were they trying to sell a guide here? And then, people were not ready to buy individual guides for games here in the States at that point. And so Nintendo Power just kind of became the de facto place where that type of guide content would run. So I would not say, I don't believe that Nintendo specifically asked developers to make weird games so that they could sell magazines. But I do think that developers kind of got in their own head a little bit about some of this shit when it came to worrying about game rentals and how hard is our game, and can a game be beaten in 3 days, or will it take you more time? And I think that they made some choices based around that in limited cases, in ways that made their games more difficult to just blaze through. And I would chalk it up more to something like that, especially, again, in the later days of the console, as rentals became more and more of a normalized thing here in the States, that we would see more developers kind of focus on that. And that's where you would see situations where, like, oh, we rebalanced the difficulty in this game for this market. And you look at that and go like, is that specifically because of rentals? Or, sometimes that would go the other way, and they're just like, well, these idiots in the US are bad at these games, so here's your international version of this, or whatever. Sort of weird either way. Trevor writes in, now that the Switch 2 will have access to ray tracing, do you think Nintendo will implement it in its first-party games? I think that if anyone can figure out real gameplay innovation with ray tracing, it's Nintendo. Imagine Luigi's Mansion or the subterranean world of Tears of the Kingdom with full ray tracing support, and how that would unlock unique gameplay experiences. I could see them putting together a team to specifically build a game around the technology. Would love to hear your thoughts. And also whether you think they will incorporate DLSS in first-party games. DLSS we'll probably see a lot more of than full-on ray tracing on the Switch 2, but, So here's my question, though. What unique gameplay experiences do you think could be unlocked in Luigi's Mansion or a cave in Tears of the Kingdom with ray tracing? It is another lighting technique in two games that are very focused on lighting techniques, alternate lighting techniques, but, Luigi's Mansion is already built around lighting and shadow and all of that stuff. Now, you could make the case, hey, they could probably make Luigi's Mansion a little more easily if they didn't have to light every area by hand. And I would say, yeah, that's certainly possible. If they wanted to build gameplay around it, they would still have to have enemies and AI and things be aware of when they are in dark or light. But I don't think that that's necessarily a unique gameplay experience. I think that if you're looking for unique gameplay experiences, ray tracing is not the place to start. Now, could you build a game around ray tracing and, have that be a unique thing? Like, probably. I'm sure that there's maybe someone smarter than I am who would come up with a thing that could only be done with ray tracing. But ultimately, it's a technology that will save developers time. It will result in, potentially smaller storage footprints for games because of, they won't have to store all the pre-baked lighting data there, I guess. I don't know how much room that actually takes up, if that's a meaningful savings or not, but that's, that's something. That's something. But at the end of the day, ray tracing is not really a technology that I think we will see be used for, just like innovative gameplay or whatever. I could see a world where Nintendo makes some use of it, but also only if it is performant enough to be up to their standards. And we kind of have to wait and see, when it comes to the Switch 2 overall, like how much of that is it really going to be capable of? Is it going to eat into frame rates? Because remember, like it's only now-ish, like maybe it was the last year, 2 years or something like that, where ray tracing hasn't just felt like, hey, switch this on and throw your frame rate in the fucking garbage. Hey, turn this on and make your game run like crap. Like it's only really been performant relatively recently on PC, and to get there, you have to spend thousands of dollars on newish GPUs, But yeah, you see, Jedi Master Interest points out Indiana Jones with their lighting, I thought was really awesome. Hi, everybody. What are you doing over there? Sorry, everyone's getting home from the store. You went on some bumpies? Did you get any cool new books? Awesome. New Peppa Pig book. I'm excited. So yeah, ray tracing, the GPUs are so expensive now, and even 40 series cards are still super fucking pricey. But that's kind of where it feels like ray tracing starts, is on that era of cards. I should say I have not seen an AMD graphics card in a very long time, outside of whatever they're putting into consoles these days. So I know that there have been some, that stuff has been getting more affordable over time. So it's not just Nvidia, but at the same time, this all still feels relatively recent, and it is still pretty expensive. The Switch 2, the hardware is what it is. It's not, like, will it be able to do some ray tracing? Probably. Will it be good? Like, maybe in simpler looking games. Well, it remains to be seen, but I don't know that I'm expecting to see a lot of I certainly would not see a lot of high end ray tracing happening on the Switch 2. I wouldn't expect it. DLSS is the sort of thing that I think we will see some of at launch, and we will probably only see more and more and more of it as time goes on. When we get to a point where, we're looking at the next generation, like 2020, if they're targeting 2027 for a next generation Xbox, if they're really going to do that, if we see another big power bump up there, does it kind of leave the Switch 2 in a position where it feels underpowered all over again? That possibility is always there. And DLSS is something you could use to kind of combat that more and more and more as time goes on, and just say like, fuck it, man, run this thing at 240p and let the magic let the magic machine learning turn it all the way up to 1080 or whatever. But yeah, we will see. Yeah, some games have been confirmed to be using DLSS at launch, so we will see some of that. First party, will they use DLSS? I don't see why not. Like, again, it's all built in. It's not like they're like eliminating some portion of the audience if they use DLSS. Like, it's a feature of the console. Nintendo should take advantage of it where they see fit. So yeah, I would not be shocked to see Nintendo using DLSS in the relatively nearish future. If not games that we're seeing this year, then certainly next year or beyond. Why not? Why not get the benefit of that out of it? You went to all the trouble to get it into that device in the first place. It's not just for third parties. So yeah, I would expect that we would see some of that. Ray tracing, Brandon in Alabama writes in with a Switch 2 quandary. I consider myself fortunate as I managed to pre-order 2 Nintendo Switch 2 consoles. I purchased one for the household of a 7-year-old daughter, 11-year-old son, and myself. The second one I secured for my 19-year-old daughter, currently living away from the home while in college. I bought these with the mind of surprising them for Christmas when the inevitable price is much higher. Again, there's that sentiment. It's so troubling. It's so troubling. The idea that people are like, oh, give it 6 months. This thing's going to be way more expensive. Like we are cooked, my man. I could use this to play the whole angle of them not expecting to get one due to price increases and low availability. However, I find I need some advice. Should I give the Switch 2 consoles to the kids as soon as my eldest daughter arrives home for the summer in mid-June, or should I wait until Christmas and let them think there's no way they're getting the one? Personally, I can wait, but I know there's something special about being the first to experience the new thing, particularly when it comes to consoles. The summer also has the relief of no homework, so I can find myself staying up later with the kids to enjoy the new Nintendo. I think it comes down to, will your children respect your answer when Christmas comes around? Can you get away with telling them, I gave you that shit in June? Or will they be expecting you to go and spend another chunk of money on them then? And are you prepared to do that? Is the other thing. Give it to them now. You got 2 of them, they can play Mario Kart together locally and have fun locally with it, you know? One on a TV, one handheld, you know, they can link it together. I assume you can do that. I assume it has local multiplayer. I don't know. I don't have a Switch 2. So, who knows if this feature is possible in this newfound future we find ourselves in. Yeah, I would probably give it to them now. And, you know, unless you are dead set on these being Christmas presents in a way where you are like, I am not buying them shit. If you think that that's going to cause strife down the line, I would just give it to him now. So let him enjoy it now. Who knows where we'll be in 6 months? Dennis writes in, do you still find yourself using your leverless controller, or was it a short-term curiosity? I ask because 8-Bit Dough announced a leverless model. And it's like 80, but yeah, it's low price compared to a lot of this other stuff. At that price, it's super tempting, even for a button masher like me, who mostly sticks to classic Neo Geo and Capcom stuff on the Mister. I use it if I'm going to be playing a fighting game for an extended period of time. I will grab it and hook it up. If I am just loading a thing up to fuck around with it for a while, then I will usually not grab it. And so I have not been playing any fighting games like super seriously lately. So I have not been using it very often. But it's kind of like there for like, okay, like next time I want to get into a fighting game. I wonder, I'm gonna try plugging that thing into a Switch 2 and see what happens. I think it works with a Switch, and I should be able to play Street Fighter with it if it still supports it. I wonder. Levi from St. Paul writes in and says, I was trying to beat Claire Obscura before Doom came out because I don't play 2 single-player games at the same time. I got to a point in the game where I just had some tertiary story beats to finish before the final engagement, so I loaded up a cheat engine script and speed ran it to beat the rest of the game. It got me thinking, back in the day, did you ever do this or use a Game Shark or something to meet a tight deadline? Like you've seen enough to judge the game, but you need to see it through. No, because I'm almost always, if I'm reviewing a game, I have a tight deadline. That means I'm playing it before it's out. which means two things. One, there are probably no cheat codes available for it, which, modern day cheat engine is, potentially a different situation there, but I have not done that. And there are no GameShark codes available for those games. Also, oftentimes the build that they would send out for a review is not going to be a byte for byte code match for final retail. It might be a little off in one way or another. So and if you had GameShark codes, they might not even work for that version of the game. No, I have never done that. I have lost sleep and done a bunch of fucking dumb shit to meet deadlines, and there have been cases where I'm like, I can't meet this deadline because I can't get the work done in time, or whatever. But like, no, I've never. I don't believe I've ever cheated through a game. Except maybe in cases where it's like, here's this funky build of a game, and like if it crashes, you might need to cheat your way back here, and here's the cheat codes that let you do it. And the developer gives you that stuff, at which point you should be asking the question, should I be reviewing this build at all? If it is this fucked up, maybe not. So yeah. Sometimes games overstay their welcome. Near Maheen says, ultimately, if you want to use cheat engine to finish a game, wouldn't that be an indication that the person doesn't actually like the game? No, I don't think so. I think there are situations where maybe a game has overstayed its welcome a bit, or you're like obsessively playing it in a way that you're like, I want to see all this side stuff through, but it is kind of a drag. Cheating your way through stuff can be fun. It wouldn't necessarily be how I would play a game the first time, but time is precious. Do what you want. Like, if you're going to have a better time cheating your way through a thing, like if I was going to play A Boy and His Blob, I would want infinite lives, because the way lives are structured in A Boy and His Blob is really it's really punitive. It's a very punishing part of the game. And so I think that makes that game better. It makes it last less time, again, something you could finish in a rental period. But that would probably be how I would play that game. Except that retro achievements have gone and fucked that up for me. So now I can't cheat. Now I have to play it for real. Ugh. But yeah, sometimes you want to grind through a thing like Cauldron, a game I talked about a bit last week, has 6 different modes in it. And so you can play through and finish that game 6 different times. I finished it on the normal mode and then started a game on like the idle game mode, where it kind of plays itself and it's auto combat and the mini games play themselves. And I played about 2/3 of the way through it, and I was like, you know what? At this point, I just have to sit here and wait for the numbers to go up, and I'm not going to do that. And so I loaded up Cheat Engine and cheated me some numbers so that I could just be done with that part of it. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. And moved on. But yeah, it's, I would not want to do that in a review context. I think that would be a bad way to review a game. If you are giving your take on a game, if you're critiquing a game, unless your critique is parts of this game are so fucked I needed to cheat in it, which is a valid thing to say. Good luck with posting that review online, because people are such fucking cops about the way people play games that you would be eviscerated for doing so. But whatever, as long as you're fucking upfront about that, I think that's a valid way to approach a game. You just have to be like, yeah, dude, this part of it was so fucked that I fucking cheated through it. Fuck this. Like, all right, cool, whatever. I would probably not do that, but hey. Scott writes in and says, the gaming discourse online was always problematic, but I felt that the direct sharing of video clips and screenshots from our consoles was a legitimate positive means of spreading word of mouth and interest to games. Twitter was a big reason all three console platforms had a share button functionality built into the console. You just had to press the button and it automatically gets uploaded to your social media feed. Now this direct share function has mostly been stripped out of consoles thanks to X, the everything app. And social media in general continues to get worse. Now the companies make you use separate apps and systems to post these clips and screenshots online. This question is a bit of a leap from that. I look at that and I nod my head and go, yes, I think we can all agree with this. But the question here, do you think a reason the gaming discourse online has gotten worse is because of the three platforms stripping out the easy share functionality of Twitter and social media, and has that hurt the ability of games to sell via word of mouth? I do not. Not at all. No, that there's a bit of a logic leap there. It was a nice to have thing. I don't know. I never used it because then you had to type the tweet on the console, and none of those had keyboards, and I never had a keyboard plugged into a console. So I'm going to hit the share button and then go around and type in, look at this fuck shit. Like, you know, no. I don't care about the image quality enough. I'm going to take a fucking photo with my phone of my TV and then type on my phone, look at this fuck shit. Or if I'm on PC, then I'm set up to, you know, take very quick screen grabs and the snipping tool and whatever to take extremely specific screenshots of a game that I can very easily post. So no. No. And that's going to do it for emails. Hey, you know what? One more. Josh in Burbank writes in and says, what was your favorite non-World of Warcraft, non-EverQuest MMO from the MMO Land Rush days? Was it Auto Assault, WildStar, Fallen Earth? I was always a Dark Age of Camelot guy, but also dabbled in Anarchy Online. It's almost definitely the nostalgia talking, but I do miss the days of jumping into a different MMO what seemed like every other month. What do you think the future holds for the genre? Seems like it's in a very weird place. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit before. My favorite non-WoW, non-EverQuest MMO from the MMO Land Rush days. It's probably... maybe it's Anarchy Online. I played a lot of Anarchy Online. That was my first MMO. I wanted to like Auto Assault, but it was too funky, and then it was gone immediately. City of Heroes was really great up to a point, and then I hit a wall with City of Heroes where it just felt... You really started to feel like the generated mission. You're just like, yeah, I am extremely doing the same thing over and over again in this game, man. I don't want to do this. I have a very, I played a good amount of Warhammer Age of Reckoning. And never really got anywhere with it, but I sure did solo my way through a significant chunk of that game. MMO, I'm very strict about the genre when we talk about what is an MMORPG. And my answer to you about the future of the genre is that the genre is largely obsolete. When we think about an MMORPG, a la EverQuest, Ultima Online, World of Warcraft, games of that nature, those games were built the way they were built because of the technology at the time. And now all of that stuff works seamlessly in the background, and you don't think about it. You don't think about what shard you're going to log into. And, I know World of Warcraft changed what a WoW server was a while ago in terms of how they structure all that stuff by merging servers and some of the other stuff they've done over time. But like, I like, when was the last one of those? Because they don't exist that way anymore. And so instead, we have these online connected games that aren't necessarily massively multiplayer in the way you think of. You know, player count is the thing there. I mean, when we talk about a game being massively multiplayer, we're talking about servers that can hold a lot of people. We're talking about servers that get overloaded and you can't log in to fucking Nerzol because fucking too many fucking people are on it. And you're like, what the fuck? We should move to a lower pop server. This is bullshit. Like, that is an MMORPG. And even then, the promise of what an MMO was never fully realized because they went and instanced the world in so many different ways. And so even the games we think of as the classic MMOs of yore were still like servers with smaller number of people. It comes down to, what's your definition of the word massive? I would say that those servers could hold what was then considered a massive number of people. But as we've talked about it before, Guild Wars 1 is not an MMORPG. It is not massively multiplayer. It is a game with a shared social space and instanced worlds. It's a 4-player game. Phantasy Star Online on the Dreamcast is a 4-player game with a social hub. Destiny is not an MMO. It is at most a 8-player game, 10-player game. When you're not playing PvP, it's a 6-player game, or perhaps a 3-player game. You know? And so that's just the advance of technology. As things have been moving forward, the MMORPG is gone because technology moved forward. And people still like to call these games MMOs because they don't fucking, because they're idiots, and that's just how the fucking world works, right? But like Genshin Impact is not a massively multiplayer game in terms of, you know, like, you know, you're running into people. That'd be like saying like, oh, Fable is a massively multiplayer game because look at these shadows you're running into. Infinity Nikki is not a massively multiplayer game. Infinity Nikki just does the Fable thing of like, here's a shadow of a character and you can interact with them in some limited ways or whatever. And so, yeah, when we talk about the heyday of MMOs and where the genre is at, it's not a genre anymore. Guild Wars 2, yeah, if anything, like they found ways to and all of this is like more cost effective, right? Like all of this is stuff that is just works better. It's better at matching players together and keeping that, you know, like, oh, we're going to put you in an area that has other humans connected to it right now because that makes for a better experience. And so we're just going to make you into this on the fly. And maybe you're going to bounce to different servers and different, you know, the way that these kind of always connected Need for Speed games would do. Of like, oh, you're driving to a different area and you're away from all the other players. We're going to seamlessly drop you out of this session and reconnect you to another session where there are more humans in it close by. Test Drive Unlimited, I think, did some similar stuff with that, if I remember right. But you know, yeah, it's stuff like EVE Online. It's stuff for it is stuff that is architected and built in a totally different time, and that stuff's been handled differently. You know, Diablo 4 is just intelligently instancing things, and you know, and when you get into the caves, you're instanced away from other humans completely, unless you're in a party with them. The same way Destiny kind of acts, right? It's like you'll occasionally encounter people here and there, but if you're doing a thing, it's like there's the part of the activity you're doing that is out in the open world where you occasionally run into some humans, and then you're like, we've got to get to this cave, and then you get to the cave and you never see another player again until you're done with that thing. You know, that's how they do all this stuff now, right? And it's like amazing trickery. Like I don't mean this in like a negative way as like, games were better before. If anything, like they've found ways to make these games less expensive to run, easier to scale up and down as the player base needs it. And ways that are better at just matching you in with other humans instead of just like, the planet side problem, which is maybe not a problem. It was more of a feature than a bug. It was the idea of like, I'm going to play planet side in the off hours because then no one is online and I can walk across enemy territory and take all their bases back because it's 3 in the fucking morning. And then they will wake up and go, oh shit, all my apes gone. And then they will take them all back. And then I will wake up at a weird hour and do it all again. You know? I think that stuff's fun. I think that stuff's neat. I like EVE Online, like all the stories about EVE Online are because it's fucking crazy, that it's for absolute lunatics. It's not realistic for most people who play video games these days to truly engage with EVE Online. And so instead, we get all of this other stuff. And, in the free-to-play space, we're getting all these other games that are certainly role-playing games of a type, but they are not massively multiplayer. They're just online RPGs. And you're going to run into people when you run into people. And I think that that's, again, an improvement. It's missing something. It's not messy the way it used to be. It's the same way the games don't have server browsers anymore, right? You don't have to pick a server to play an MMO, to play an online RPG. You just fucking jump in and it goes like, I don't know, this dude here. And you're like, oh, weird. Okay. I'm going to run away from that guy because I don't want trouble. But it's not, like now you give thumbs ups to ladders in video games. And that's a connected experience. Should we have connected? It's a question for a different time. But I miss that. I don't know. I like both ways. I like the kind of modern, the kind of, and by modern, I mean like the way Phantasy Star Online handled kind of being a connected game and whatever, even though it was really just 4 players like Diablo, or a limited number of players the way some of those other games were. I think that stuff's fine. I think I don't. But at the same time, SF Zone says we lost so much when we lost server culture, and that's exactly it. Not just I think people think about that in terms of just like Quake servers and all of that, but I think MMO servers are very much like in that same boat, right? Like different servers would have different things going on. Of just like, oh yeah, when you go to this fucking zone Monday through Friday at this time, there is always some fucking super high level fucking orc sitting here just killing Alliance players because it's the lowest level PvP zone on the Alliance side. And unless we can get everybody together to go fucking stop him, no one's going to get any quests done in this zone tonight. Now that's a bad time. As someone who went through that on multiple days, that was a bad time. It was not fun. But it was unlike anything else you could have happen in a video game at that point. And so the very aspect of just like, man, this guy is standing here and he is fucking saying pool is closed, son. And you're like, well, all right. I guess we're not fucking going down here. Back to Stranglethorn, I guess. Whatever. I don't know. I think that stuff is neat. It's neat from a social angle, right? From like these are humans playing these games and look at how fucked up this thing is. And we've bred that out of games much to their benefit because that type of griefing and that type of thing kind of ruining shit is, it's bad for more players than it is good for the guy doing it, who I'm sure is having a wonderful time doing so. But yeah, I don't know, the same way, you can't just fucking hop on someone's fucking Ventrilo server and spam a fucking soundboard anymore. It's just not done that way anymore. Everyone is locked away in their little worlds. And it's very easy to see why it had to be that way because of the way that griefing evolved and the way that, like, again, most open voice chat, like, all it's just fucking miserable. It's not a good experience for anyone. Like, why bother exposing yourself to that shit at this point, you know? So, it's games are better as a result, but they've become slightly more sanitized along the way. And we've lost some of that Wild West, like, check this shit out. Like the Uno cameras on Xbox Live, like there's just a little bit less of like, look at this fucked up thing. And you can still get some of it, right? Of like, there's still like hints of it, games with like user created maps. Or I'm sure if we spent enough time digging through Roblox, that you would find some things in there that you'd be like, they let kids launch this application? Are you fucking kidding me? Candy1 asks how moderated is Switch 2 game chat going to be. I'm pretty sure that they'd only allow it with people on your friends list. My understanding, and again, I don't have a Switch 2. But my understanding of it is that it is not something where they allow strangers to chat. I think it is only for people that are on your friends list. And so, yeah, I'm sure that stuff will still probably be moderated, but not necessarily in the way, in the way that it would need to be if it was just strangers cursing at each other. Yeah, Counter-Strike removed image sprays for a reason. Yeah, I guess you're right. And that reason is to sell cosmetics, motherfucker. Yeah. Not going to see any rock hard dicks out of these cases. Just buy some more keys, man. Buy some more keys. Get the sprays. Same reason cheat codes are gone. Because what if we sold you some fucking DLC? Remember when EA was selling a fucking fully maxed out golfer in Tiger Woods on the Xbox 360? And people were like, what the fuck? And now that's just like a normal thing. That's just like, oh yeah, well, Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard, man. I miss the filth, but also, it's very easy to understand why all of that stuff kind of had to go away or be a lot harder to find. At the end of the day, you've still got fun, weird shit like Tower Unite and VR chat, which are not necessarily, whatever. Those have game things in them for sure. Those can still be the Wild West sometime. Steam Workshop support can still come through and let you see some things, So there are still a few final frontiers left. I don't know what I was doing, but I fired up Quake 1 and Quake 2 here on the PC this morning. The modern remakes, the modern reissues of both games. And it was weird launching Quake 1. It's always going to feel weird, but it was weird launching Quake 1 and then going to like a matchmaking screen and being like looking for a match and then looking at it for a while and then coming back and going like, we didn't find any matches. Like, oh man, that sucks. And then I loaded up Quake 2. There were a bunch of people playing Quake 2. So I played some multiplayer Quake 2 using weapons from one of the Quake 2 DLCs and going, yeah, hell yeah. These weapons fucking suck, but they're weird. And that was an okay time. I don't know. Anyway, this week is going to be a strange one. Because of all of the things happening. Let's see. So today is Tuesday. The podcast is happening, and that's it. It's Tuesday. Tomorrow, There is a Sony State of Play that I don't think I'm going to be able to do anything with live, but I will maybe watch it at some point and do something. They just announced it this morning, a 40-minute video showing some upcoming games. We'll see what that ends up being. I don't know that I will be able to do that live because of when it's happening. But tomorrow night, I am going to go buy a Switch 2 and perhaps some cartridges, some video games for the Switch 2. One last thing on the Switch 2 stuff here. And in the Department of Consumer Confusion, how fucked up do you think it's going to be when people start sticking micro SD cards into their Switch 2 and then going, oh shit, this doesn't work. Why doesn't this work? What happened? Why doesn't this work? That is probably going to be the actual bad thing around the Switch 2, right? Is because it only works with micro SD Express cards, which are not always clearly labeled on the card itself and also are in relatively short supply. I just yesterday ordered a 256 gigabyte card from Walmart that I think is showing up today. I don't want a 256 gigabyte card. I want a 512 or at least, if not a terabyte. But they don't. I think Lexar has announced they are making a terabyte card, but it has not hit shelves yet. That seems like it's going to be a fucking mess. Like, it's a sensible upgrade based on, loading times and speeds and read write speeds and whatever else they got going on. It is understandable why they have gone this route, but boy, oh boy, this seems like it's going to be a fucking mess. Because that has not been well explained at all. Anyway. Wednesday, I'm going to go buy a Switch 2. I have orders showing up from multiple places now, so I don't know how this is going to go. I ordered what I have on order is just a Switch 2. They have said that they will have some accessories and games available for sale as well, so I will potentially buy some games while I am there. But I have a Pro controller coming from Walmart and a camera coming from someone else. And I don't know when those will show up. And should I just get a Pro controller at Best Buy if they have one and then try to cancel the other order or whatever? I don't know what to do about that. I don't know what the answer is there. But having the orders spread across these other retailers and I don't know how this is going to go. Sign Guy Bubsy says, I want that Piranha Plant camera. Don't get it. It is actually worse quality than the regular camera. It is supposedly lower quality image than the regular camera. So I would not get the cute one. Thursday, depending on how the day goes, I may run so Wednesday in the morning I will run a stream at the normal time. Tomorrow I'll be here. We'll do something with video games. And then I will go get a Switch 2 that night. Thursday, I may potentially run a Switch 2 focused stream sometime in the morning if things line up. And I have not done so the night before. If I end up streaming a bunch the night before and there's nothing left to do with it, then fuck it. And then Friday is we will rank some 8-bit Nintendo games in the morning, and then in the afternoon we will watch the Summer Game Fest stream. And maybe Day of the Devs. Day of the Devs right after it. Maybe Day of the Devs, if that's right after it. We'll see on that one. or if the IO interactive thing is right, I'll have to look at and see the timing on that stuff. Oh man. Bryn points out that GameStop has a GameStop branded SD card, micro SD express card, 1 terabyte, $189. It's a lot. That's a lot of do re mi. That's too much money. This whole thing's too much money. But that's, I don't know. Terabyte micro SD cards were always kind of, the Lexar's 220, great. Yikes. Let's go. Instead, we're all going to invest in that 4 terabyte Xbox card for $429. I need 4 terabytes of storage for all my Xbox Series X games. $429. That's like, that is the fucking, at some point, that is the price of a console. You could get a PlayStation 5 right now for less money than a 4 terabyte add-on for your Xbox. It's fucked up is what it is. Everything is broken. Everything is broken. But whatever, man. I don't know. Sometimes the video games are still good, and that's nice. In these trying times when everything is broken, it's nice when sometimes at least the video games are still fun. So go do that. And I will see you in the morning, and we'll do some stuff then. Have a good one. I'll see you soon.